Moving on to our next priority then, we're going to be looking at fire. Now, fire can get people a little disconcerted, and I understand why. In the wilderness context it makes perfect sense. So we just have to understand what we're trying to extract from that example to work in our urban scenario. And quite simply, our fire would be used in the outdoors to warm us and to process our food, basically to be able to cook things, and also to sterilise our water should boiling be our preferred method. So when we say fire in the urban context, actually I'm thinking two things. First of all, it's having something that can fulfil that ability of processing my food and boiling my water. I'm not necessarily thinking in a small apartment such as this one as using fire to keep me warm. I'm going to be using, clothing, additional blankets and things like that, as I mentioned, in shelter. If I do have the facility in my apartment, or if I'm moving towards a house, to have a fireplace to keep me warm, even better. But the second thing I'm actually thinking, as well as something to prepare my food and boil my water, is that about fire protection or fire prevention. So when I say fire in the urban setting, those are the two things that are coming to mind. So let's look at the first one, and here we're trying to find an alternative cooking method. So again, imagine my sort of hot plate. I've got a power outage, so that's basically non-functioning. What have I got that I can boil my water and cook my food with? Now, it may be you have a grill or a barbecue or something like that. It may be you really don't have another alternative. And I said at the beginning in the introduction of this, the big thing I'm about is low cost to no cost solutions. Now, this is something you may have to just invest a small sum of money into to get a small portable alternative cooking method. And the one I've opted for here is this excellent little setup of a detachable gas stove. Things like this are available in, definitely on the internet, but sort of any camping store and things like that. Very small, portable, easy to store. It's not going to take up much room or become problematic. And effectively what this gives me is a single unit gas burner that sits on top of this gas canister that's self-sealing. So basically I can attach it and it will work, and then I can remove this canister and return it back to storage as necessary. So this just gives me sort of a one gas stove option. And with that, obviously I already have my existing pan that I would use on my regular stove. I would just make sure that that pan's going to fit and function on my sort of emergency measure stove. Now again, this is going back to what is it you individually require and what budget do you actually have. For somebody living on their own in an apartment such as this, with the correct sort of food preparation, which we're looking at very, very minimal preparation required, this is going to suffice. If you're a couple or a small family in a small space such as this one, maybe a one sort of stove option isn't better. You'd be looking at sort of a 2 to 3 place stove or things like that. But looking towards the kind of camping style alternatives is going to be a great place to start. Now again, obviously you can buy these new, but also using things like eBay, Craigslist, all the various incarnations of that worldwide, you should be able to find yourself a really good deal so you're not spending a huge amount of money. Now, two things I really need you to consider if we're looking at using these gas stoves. One is they should be used in a well ventilated area. So I need to have a plan that means I can actually use this near to a window or some area that I'm not going to be allowing carbon monoxide to build up in my small living space. So actually what we've got in this apartment is quite a small, very lightweight table and these two large fantastic windows, so I could just move my table to the window and that would become my new cooking area effectively, and I have that window open whenever I'm preparing food or indeed using this stove. Okay. The second thing is of course about storing the gas canister. You don't want these to be in an area that they can get excessively warm or that they can kind of slip and be dropped on something that could potentially pierce them. So again, just exercise due caution when you have these, not only the quantity you have to store but also sort of how and where you store them. Now this I actually keep on this fantastic shelving unit just to my right hand side, very low, very stable, and I just have two sort of small gas canisters there to kind of be safe and out of the way. Now the one thing I'd encourage you to do with any of these kind of preparations, if you're buying new equipment, is to actually just physically test it and try it out and make sure you understand how it works. Okay, so when you've bought it, let's say you're going to buy 2 of these gas canisters, get yourself a third one and allow yourself to actually run this stove and try preparing a meal on it. It's not a big sort of lengthy chore, but it just gives you the confidence in using your equipment, and also will highlight some of the problems you may experience that you can begin to then mitigate or plan for before you actually need to use this for real, as it were. Now, I said there was 2 parts to fire in my mind when it came to urban preparedness. We've just looked at the cooking, food preparation part. I'm now going to be looking at the fire protection prevention part. And in my mind, no home, no matter how small, really should not have a smoke detector. Functioning, that's the key part. It's all very well having it stuck on the wall, but you need to make sure this thing's actually working. And also some limited means of fire suppression. I'm a big fan of the fire blankets and also the small fire extinguishers that you can purchase. Now, I haven't actually got those yet. I've only been in place 3 or 4 days, and I've been out sort of buying up things to do this mini-series, and I'm still looking for one, if not both, of those features. So the smoke detector I have, but the fire blanket or the fire extinguisher I'm still looking for. Now, what I would say, the only thing on fire extinguishers, these things have different ratings for the different fires they're meant to be used on, whether they be liquid, electrical, or sort of more materialistic fires. So please ensure you buy the correct type of extinguisher for any potential fire you feel that you may be tackling. And if you're not sure, then just speak to the store clerk, or again just do a little bit more research into that. Speak to your local fire department. That's normally the best place to get information, and also quite often the best deals on some of this fire suppression equipment. So use the local resources you have to you. And they must be easily available. What you don't want is to kind of tuck your fire suppression means at the back of a cupboard or up high on a shelf or something like that. They need to be easily accessible and in close proximity to the area that you're concerned you may actually have a fire threat from. In this circumstance, it's going to be in my kitchen area, most likely. So let's just review this short section on fire. I'm looking at having an independent means to be able to cook my food and boil my water, and I'm also looking to address any fire threats I feel I may have in my small living space and put in some detection and protection measures against those. Brilliant. Now let's move on to the next stage.